Mark Neumann is a Republican candidate for Wisconsin governor. Mark is a former congressman who represented Wisconsin's 1st District from 1995 to 1999. He's a resident of Neshota. He is a founder of Neumann Developments, Inc., a home builder in Neshota, and his sister company, Neumann Enterprises, Inc. Mark and his wife have, Mark tells me, 3 grown-up children, and he's got 3 grandchildren now. And he's here today to bring us up to date on his campaign and how it's going, and what he thinks should be the priorities for the state as the governor's race moves forward. So, Mark, welcome to the Press Club.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. It's exciting to be here. It's exciting as this race is unfolding to see what's happening as the momentum swings in the favor of our campaign. After 12 years back in the private sector as a small business owner, it's very interesting to take a look at running for office again. I can tell you that the first time we set, am I doing that? Maybe you're not all, are you all hearing that? There we go. Sorry. The first time we set our, it's actually how I talk, just so you know. The first time we set our businesses aside, America had a growing deficit, it had a growing debt, and we were losing jobs in the hundreds of thousands to Mexico. When I went into Congress, we had a fundamental theory, and the theory went like this: if we could control government spending, we would balance the budget, we would be in a position to cut taxes. If we cut taxes, people would keep more of their own money, and if they kept more of their own money, there's only 1 of 2 things would happen. They would either spend it, which would create jobs because somebody had to supply those goods and services, or, can I do PowerPoint?
Yeah, we can do it.
I can use my basketball coaching voice if you want me to. I am a home builder. In our business, you make everything work, and when it doesn't work, you fix it and move on. So, when we were there, the basic fundamental theory of cutting taxes: you keep more of your own money. When you keep more of your own money, only 1 of 2 things are going to happen: either you're going to spend it, which is going to create jobs, or you're going to save it. And when you save it, it becomes a capital for our businesses to grow and expand and succeed. If you look back on that time in our history, it was 1994 to 1998. You will see it's the only time in a generation that the federal budget has not only been balanced, but got into surplus. You will see that we passed the largest tax cut in American history. And if you look back on 12 years ago, the problems facing America were very different than the problems today. We were very concerned as a nation that there was going to be inflationary pressure because the number of jobs that were being created were exceeding the number of employees that were available, and that of course led to a concern about inflation. So as we were looking at this, the theory worked. If you can control government spending so you can balance the budget, you're in a position to cut taxes, people keep more of their own money, and it leads to job growth and economic development in the country at work. There were tens of thousands of jobs created, the budget was in surplus, and I'm happy to say my wife and I came home to Wisconsin and stayed here. We started a business, we started back in the business world. For the last 12 years, we've been managing a variety of businesses, all in the real estate and or home building industry, as well as the schools that we've started here in Milwaukee, our choice schools. And when I think about Milwaukee and I think about the problems in education, and then I look at those schools, and the credit goes to the people in those school systems, but our kids are advancing academically 5% faster than an average child across the United States of America. Here in Milwaukee, where we have all the struggles with our education system, we have found out that we can in fact educate the high-risk students that we have in our school systems. We found we can do it at about 50 cents on the dollar. And I have to tell you, as I look at this, and we see the Wall Street Journal report that we have a 12% higher graduation rate in choice schools in Milwaukee than we do in public schools. We find other studies that say they're performing the same, but one costs half as much as the other. It is very perplexing to me that in government they would look at this situation where one system is outperforming the other, and it costs half as much in the system that is performing, and that we would limit the number of students that would be in the system that costs less money and is actually doing a better job in terms of educating our kids. So one of the things I will be looking at Governor, in terms of providing better education for our students is elimination of the caps here in the city of Milwaukee, so we can encourage additional competition to lead the education system here in the right direction. As governor, my top priority will be bringing jobs to Wisconsin. When I talk about bringing jobs to Wisconsin, it has to start with the same theory that we took to Washington, D.C. We've talked a lot about budget problems, and I'd just like to briefly show you what we're thinking on the budget. I'll do this out here so you all can see it as well. If we think about the budget today in the state of Wisconsin, we are currently spending approximately $31 billion. Can you all hear me all right if I'm here? Is that okay? Currently spending, roughly speaking, 31. You usually hear numbers in the 60s because it's a two-year budget as opposed to one. We're taking in, roughly speaking, 29. These are rough numbers. That difference between here, that's the stimulus money and that's budget gimmicks that we're all hearing about. So today, when the governor that goes in to take office needs to understand that we are, in fact, short revenue when we start this next system. Our plans for the budget are very similar to what we took to Washington, D.C. If we allow spending to grow at 1% less than the rate of inflation, and again, I want to be very clear on this. This is a reduction in the size and scope of our state government by at least 1% annually. That is effectively saying that the government needs to find out how to present the goods and services that this state needs for $1 out of every 100 they're spending less next year. If we have inflation at 3%, that will leave the spending increase line at 2%. And to be clear again, I would like to see this flat or even going down, but I'm putting my name on this that we're actually going to get this done. I would like to overperform for our constituents as opposed to overpromise as happens so often in politics. We understand revenue to the state budget. Revenue goes up for two reasons. It goes up because of real growth in the economy, and it goes up because of inflation. Real growth in the economy, if we bring a business to Milwaukee, that business is going to employ people, and those people are going to pay taxes. That's real growth in the economy. Inflation, if the employees here in Milwaukee get a pay raise, they're earning more money, so of course they're paying more taxes. So we have the revenue line growing because of both real growth in the economy and because of inflation. If we have real growth at 2% and inflation at 3%, which are reasonable estimates at this point in time, we will have the revenue line growing faster than the spending line, and the lines will in fact cross, and once they cross, we get into surplus. That's the money we use for tax reduction. Now, I have a lot of people who say that this can't actually happen. They say they've heard a lot of politicians talk, so I went into my library and I pulled out, and I know it's a little bit hokey, but I pulled out a chart from 1992 that I kept in my library because it meant a lot to me. When I started running for Congress, we understood that spending at the federal government level was climbing at an 8% rate. We understood revenues were growing at about 6%, which was roughly the sum of inflation plus real growth in the economy. And therefore, since revenue was growing slower than spending, this gap, the deficit, was getting wider and wider and wider. The theory was if we could take that spending growth rate and drop it down to a point where it was at or below the rate of inflation, that in fact the lines would cross, and when they crossed we would be in surplus and in a position to in fact cut taxes. When I got to Washington, D.C., one of the first things we did in our office was write a detailed plan specifically telling folks how to get from where we were to where we're going to. This book was written in 1995, and if you actually look at the book and see what we did back then, we projected a balanced budget in 1999. I know you can't see that from here, but it's the actual document that we used in Washington, D.C. The point I would make is that when we talk about this chart, we've done this before. We know how to do it, and we can do it again right here in the state of Wisconsin. If we are successful, and we get the budget truly balanced, without gimmicks and without stimulus, and into surplus, we are in a position to cut taxes, and what's most important about that, we know it's going to lead to job growth and economic development, and we know it's going to put Wisconsin in a more competitive position to attract jobs to our state. When I'm running for governor, folks, this is what it's all about. It's what it was about when I ran for Congress, and we can do this here in the state of Wisconsin and make Wisconsin the most competitive state in the nation in terms of attracting jobs.